Tamara Petrovna had lived in that apartment for 28 years, and she had never once been afraid to open her own door. That Tuesday, she was. The bell rang twice, short and impatient, the way her son always rang. She wiped her hands on the kitchen towel and went down the hall. Through the peephole, she saw Artyom standing on the landing, and in his right hand was a yellow tape measure. She opened the door. "Hi, Mom." He kissed her cheek without slowing down, already stepping past her into the hall. "We just want to measure where the wardrobe goes." "What wardrobe?" "For Sasha, the one from IKEA, the tall one. Christina says it's 240, but I think the ceiling here is 255, so it fits." He was already in the small room, the one she called her sewing room, the one with the window facing the courtyard and the poplar. He crouched, hooked the tape to the baseboard, and let it run out with that ugly metal rattle. "Artyom." Her voice came out thinner than she wanted. "I haven't agreed to anything." "Mom." He did not look up. He wrote a number on his palm with a pen. "Come on, we talked about this." "We talked. I didn't say yes." Then he did look up. He stood, brushed his knees, and took out his phone. He tapped twice and turned the screen toward her, and Tamara Petrovna felt the floor go soft under her slippers. It was a photograph of a document. Not a clear one, taken at an angle, half the page in shadow. But she could see the notary's stamp, the purple circle of it, and at the bottom right, in the small, careful hand she had used all her life on payroll sheets at the factory, her own signature. "See?" Artyom said. "It's done. So stop making it complicated." She looked at that signature for a long time. Long enough that her son grew uncomfortable and pulled the phone back. "Where did you get this?" she said. "Christina had it. From the notary's office." "Mom, don't start, please. You signed on Thursday. Everybody knows." "Who is everybody?" "Christina, her mother, Sasha's school, because we need to register him at this address for the district." He shrugged like a man listing the weather. "It's all in motion. That's why we're measuring." Tamara Petrovna went back to the kitchen and sat down on the stool by the window, because her legs wanted her to. Through the wall she heard the tape rattle out and snap back, out and snap back. She heard her son whistling. She thought about the fact that she had indeed gone to the notary on Thursday. Alone, a day earlier than they had arranged, at 9 in the morning, with her passport and the green folder of documents she had kept in the linen closet since 1998. And she thought about what she had actually signed there, and she said nothing at all. The apartment was 2 rooms on Pervomayskaya, 4th floor, no elevator, a corner unit so it was cold in winter and bearable in July. Tamara Petrovna had received it in 1997, when the factory still had a housing list, and she had been on that list for 11 years. 11 years of standing at the same machine, of putting her name down again every January, of listening to the head of the committee explain why someone else had a stronger case. Her husband Kolya had lived in it with her for 6 years, and then died in the spring, quietly, in the hospital on Sadovaya, and she had raised Artyom in these 2 rooms alone. She had painted these walls 4 times. She had replaced the pipes in 2009 with money she took from her heart medication budget. And she had cried when the workers cracked the tile in the bathroom, not because of the tile, but because she had saved for that tile for 2 years. Now her son was measuring the sewing room for a wardrobe. He came into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator, took the sausage out, and started eating it standing up with the door open, exactly the way he had at 14. 252, he said. "It fits." "Artyom, sit down." "I have to go. We're picking up Sasha from swimming." Sit down. He sighed and sat, and he ate the sausage, and he looked at his phone while she talked. I want to understand something, she said. In your head, whose apartment is this? Mom, don't. No, I'm asking calmly. Whose? Yours. Obviously yours. He put the phone face down, which for him was a great concession. But you're 63, and you're alone. And there's a real risk, Mom, a real one, that if things go badly for me, the bailiffs come and they look at family property and they can put a claim on this. That isn't how it works. That's exactly how it works, Christina asked the lawyer. Which lawyer? A lawyer, Mom, a real one. He rubbed his face. Look, if it's in Sasha's name, nobody can touch it. Not the bank, not the bailiffs, nobody. It's protection. For you, too. You keep living here. Nothing changes for you. You don't even notice the difference. Just a piece of paper. And if it's just a piece of paper, why does the wardrobe need to fit? He stopped. For about 2 seconds, her son looked exactly like the boy who had broken the neighbor's window with a hockey puck and had come home to tell her about it himself, because he had been raised to. Then it passed. Because Sasha is 13, and he sleeps in the kitchen, Artyom said. In the kitchen, Mom, on a folding bed, behind a curtain. Do you know what that's like for a boy his age? He can't bring a friend home. He does homework on the same table where we eat. And here, he gestured at the wall, at the poplar, at the courtyard. Here there's a whole room with nothing in it but your fabric. It isn't nothing. It's fabric. It's my work, she said. I take orders. Hems, curtains, that coat for Nadezhda from the 3rd floor. It's 4,000 a month, sometimes 5. 5,000, he repeated, and he laughed, not cruelly, which was somehow worse. Mom, 5,000! He kissed the top of her head on his way out and told her Christina would call about the furniture delivery, and the door closed, and Tamara Petrovna sat in her kitchen and listened to his shoes going down 4 flights. Then she got up, went to the linen closet, and moved the stack of towels on the 2nd shelf. The green folder was gone. She stood there with a towel in each hand and felt something happen in her chest that was not fear and was not grief. It was closer to the feeling she used to get on the last day of the month at the factory, when the numbers came in and the plan was met and there was nothing anyone could say to her. She put the towels back neatly, squared the edges, and closed the closet door. Then she went to the hall, took her coat off the hook, and went down to the 4th floor landing to knock on Galina Ivanovna's door, because there was one thing she needed to arrange before Thursday, and she needed a witness for it. Galina Ivanovna opened her door in a housecoat with a wooden spoon still in her hand, and she did not ask a single question. She looked at Tamara Petrovna's face and stepped back to let her in. Her kitchen smelled of cabbage and bay leaf. There was a radio on the windowsill playing something orchestral, very low, the way old people keep the radio on so the flat is not silent. She turned the gas down under the pot and sat, and only then she said, "You are white as a wall. Sit before you fall." "I need you on Thursday," Tamara Petrovna said. "In the morning, around 11. I need you in my kitchen with your tea and your knitting, and I need you to stay until I tell you to go home." Thursday. Galina Ivanovna set the spoon down on a saucer. "What is on Thursday?" "I don't know yet. Something." "Tamara?" Christina called on Sunday and said they are coming Thursday at noon to discuss the future, she said. That is how she put it. To discuss the future. And when that girl uses a word like future, she has already made 3 phone calls I don't know about. Galina Ivanovna was 71 and had buried a husband and a brother and had worked 40 years in the district housing office, which meant she had seen every ugly thing a family could do about square meters, and she had seen it in triplicate with signatures. "So," she said, "it's the apartment." "It's the apartment." "Of course it is." Galina Ivanovna got up and put the kettle on, because in her kitchen, serious talk required the kettle. 2 rooms, corner unit, 4th floor, and a courtyard with a poplar, which nobody values until they try to buy something with a poplar. Do you know that in April a woman came around asking questions? Tamara Petrovna lifted her head. What woman? Not a woman like you think. A girl with a folder. Very sweet, very polite, asking the pensioners on the bench who lives alone in the building. For a social program, she said. Deliveries of groceries for people over 60. Nobody signed anything. We are not idiots. But she wrote things down. Galina Ivanovna poured. And 2 weeks ago, I saw your Christina in the courtyard with a man in a good coat. They were photographing the building, the facade, the entrance, the windows. He was pointing up at your floor. The tea was too hot to hold. Tamara Petrovna held it anyway. Photographing, she said. Photographing. And I will tell you what people photograph a building for. And it is not so the grandson can have a bedroom. Galina Ivanovna sat down heavily. They photograph it for a listing. Neither of them said anything for a while. The radio played. Somewhere below, a car door slammed and a dog started up. I went to the notary on Thursday, Tamara Petrovna said. Last Thursday, a day before they arranged it. Alone? Alone. And I signed. Galina Ivanovna put both hands flat on the table. Tamara Petrovna, tell me you did not sign a deed of gift. Tamara Petrovna looked at her over the rim of the cup. She had a face that had never been good at lying, and she knew it. And she had learned instead the more useful skill, which was to say nothing and let people fill the silence themselves. I signed what I decided to sign, she said. And on Thursday, you will hear it read out loud. And I would rather you heard it then, with them, than now. Galina Ivanovna studied her for a long moment. Then something moved at the corner of her mouth. Something that, in a younger woman, would have been a grin. 11 o'clock, she said. I'll bring the knitting. The previous Thursday had gone like this. She had woken at 5:30 without an alarm, because she had not really slept, and she had ironed her good blouse, the gray one with the small collar, and she had put on the shoes she wore to funerals and to the pension office. She had taken the green folder out from under the towels and checked the contents 3 times. The ownership certificate from 1997, the extract from the register she had ordered in March, her passport, Kolya's death certificate, the technical passport of the flat with the little floor plan drawn in blue. She had walked to the notary's office on Sovietskaya, 20 minutes, past the school and the bakery, and she had sat in the corridor for 40 minutes because the woman before her was crying about a garage. Marina Lvovna was maybe 50, with reading glasses on a chain and a cardigan over her shoulders and a desk so tidy it looked staged. She did not smile in a friendly way. She smiled the way a surgeon smiles. Sit down. Passport. Tamara Petrovna sat and put the passport on the desk and then put her hands in her lap so they would not shake. So, Marina Lvovna said, turning pages. You called about a transfer of ownership to a grandson, a minor. That's what my son wants. The notary looked up over the glasses. I did not ask what your son wants. I asked what you want. And that, Tamara Petrovna would think later, was the moment the whole thing turned. Not the tape measure, not the missing folder. That question, from a stranger in a cardigan, in a room that smelled of paper and radiator dust. Nobody had asked her what she wanted since 2011, when the girls at the factory asked what cake she would like for her retirement. "I want to be honest with you," she said. "I don't know." "Good. That is the correct answer." Marina Lvovna took the glasses off. "Tamara Petrovna, I'm going to tell you what I tell every woman your age who comes in here with her son's idea in her handbag. I am not permitted to advise you against a transaction. I am permitted to explain consequences. Would you like me to explain consequences?" "Yes." A deed of gift is irreversible in practice. Once it is registered, the apartment belongs to the recipient. Not partly, entirely. She said it without emphasis, which made it worse. You would become a person living in someone else's apartment. Your right to stay there would rest entirely on the goodwill of the owner, and, since the owner is a minor, on the goodwill of his parents. They say nothing would change for me. They may sincerely believe that. Marina Lvovna folded her hands. Now let me tell you what I have watched happen from this chair. Nothing changes for 8 months. Then a second child is born, or a marriage ends, or a debt matures. The apartment is sold, because with the guardianship authority's permission, it can be sold, and in the paperwork, you will not exist. In the past 5 years, I have had 11 women in that chair asking me how to undo it. In 2 cases, we managed something. In 9, we did not. Tamara Petrovna looked at the little floor plan in blue, at the 2 rectangles that were her rooms. My son has debts, she said. He says the bailiffs could take my apartment for his debts. That is false. He says a lawyer told him. Then the lawyer is imaginary or dishonest. Your son's creditors have no claim on property that belongs to you and was acquired before and outside his participation. Marina Lvovna wrote something on a pad. The frightening story is almost always the load-bearing wall of these arrangements. Remove it and see what is left standing. And if I remove it, Tamara Petrovna said slowly, what is left standing is that my grandson sleeps in a kitchen behind a curtain. For the first time, the notary's face did something human. Yes, she said. That is usually true as well. Both things are true at once. That is what makes it cruel. They sat with that. I want him to have it, Tamara Petrovna said at last. That is the part they don't understand. I want Sasha to have it. When I am dead, he can have all of it. Both rooms, the poplar, the cracked tile in the bathroom. I never wanted anything else. I only don't want to hand over my own front door while I am still walking through it. Marina Lvovna put her glasses back on. Then we are not going to do a deed of gift, she said. We are going to do 3 other things, and I am going to explain each one twice, and you are going to take your time, because you are paying me for exactly that. Do you have 2 hours? I have all day. Excellent. The notary pulled a fresh sheet toward her. Then let us begin with what you actually want and work backwards to the paperwork. The wardrobe was delivered on Saturday morning at 9:20. 2 young men in matching t-shirts carried it up the 4 flights in flat brown boxes, breathing hard, scraping the corner of the banister on the 3rd floor, and Tamara Petrovna stood in her hallway in her housecoat and watched them stack the boxes against the wall of her sewing room. Where do you want them, Granny? I did not order this. Says here, Pervomayskaya 12, apartment 16, Nesterova Ka. He held out a phone with a screen she could not read without her glasses. Sign here with your finger. I will not sign anything. Fine, whatever, it's paid. He put the phone away and the two of them clattered back down the stairs, and she was left with 4 brown boxes taller than she was, and a smell of cardboard and packing tape in her flat. Artyom came at noon with a cordless screwdriver and Sasha. Her grandson stood in the doorway with his hood up and his hands in his sleeves, and would not look at her, and Tamara Petrovna understood immediately that he knew everything and was ashamed of all of it. He had grown again. He was almost as tall as his father, and thin the way boys are thin at 13, all wrist and neck. Sashenka, take off the hood, you're indoors. He took off the hood. His ears went red. Hi, Grandma. Have you eaten? Mom, don't feed him, we ate, Artyom said, dragging the first box into the sewing room. Sasha, hold this end. Tamara Petrovna went into the kitchen and put the pan on anyway, and made him 3 sirniki with the last of the tvorog, and put the jam on the table. And Sasha came and ate them standing up, because his father was calling him from the other room, and between bites he said, very quietly, without lifting his eyes from the plate, Grandma, I told them I don't need a room. She stopped with the towel in her hands. When did you tell them that? On Tuesday. I said I don't mind the kitchen. He pushed a piece of sirnik through the jam. Dad said I don't understand my own interests. And what do you understand? He shrugged. 13 years old. A whole shrug of a man in a school hoodie. That it's your apartment. That we already have somewhere to sleep. He glanced at the doorway and lowered his voice further. Grandma, Mom's been talking to a man on the phone. About money. About this place. She goes on the balcony to do it. From the other room, the screwdriver whined. Sasha, look at me. He looked. You did nothing wrong. You are not the problem in this. Not 1 gram of it. Do you hear me? Whatever happens on Thursday, whatever anybody shouts, it is not about you. What's Thursday? Nothing. Eat. By 4 o'clock, the wardrobe stood assembled against the wall where her sewing table had been for 19 years, and the sewing table was folded up on the balcony under a sheet of plastic, and her 4 boxes of fabric had been put on the balcony too, the cottons and the good wool and the lining silk she had been saving for a dress for herself, out there where the damp gets into everything by October. Artyom stood in the doorway of the room, sweating, pleased, holding the screwdriver like a trophy. Look at that. Fits perfectly. 2 centimeters to spare. You put my fabric on the balcony. Temporarily. Fabric cannot go on a balcony, Artyom. It takes the moisture. It will smell of damp, and no customer will take a curtain that smells of damp. Mom. He said it the way you say a word to a child who is stalling at bedtime. Fabric. Christina arrived on Monday at 6:30 in the evening with a folder. She was 36 and pretty in a hard, well-maintained way, hair the color of expensive honey, nails done, a good gray coat which she did not take off. She came in, said, Tamara Petrovna, hello, don't get up, although Tamara Petrovna had not got up, and went straight through to the small room and stood in it, measuring it with her eyes. Then she came back to the kitchen, sat, and opened the folder. So, I want us to have a calm, adult conversation, without emotions, because emotions are what ruin families. She smoothed a page. Artyom is soft with you. I am not soft, and you will thank me for it. Take your coat off at least. I'm fine. Now. She turned the page toward Tamara Petrovna, who could see columns of numbers and could not read them. Here is the situation in figures, because figures don't argue. Our rent is 32,000 a month. Artyom's loan payment is 19. The second card is another 11 minimum. Sasha's tutoring, because he is going into the 9th grade, and if he doesn't get the maths up, he goes to a technical college, and that is his whole life decided at 15. That is another 8. Do you follow? I follow the numbers. I don't follow why they are in my kitchen. Christina's smile did not move, but something behind it did. Because there is a 2-room apartment standing here with 1 pensioner in it, she said. 86 square meters of living space between 4 people, if you count properly, and 62 of it is occupied by 1 person who uses 1 room, 1 chair, and 1 saucepan. 54 square meters, not 86, and I use both rooms. You sleep in one and keep rags in the other. Tamara Petrovna set down her cup. Christina, she said, in this kitchen, my husband died knowing his son had a home. In that room, my son learned to walk, and in the corner where your wardrobe is standing, I sewed the dress your mother wore to your wedding, because you had no money for a dress for her, and you asked me at 11 at night, and I sat until 4. You will not use the word rags in my house. For a second, 1 second, Christina looked away. Then she pulled a second sheet from the folder and laid it down like a card. Fine. Let's do it your way, plainly. She tapped the sheet. This is the arrangement. Sasha takes the small room. That is done. The wardrobe is in. Artyom and I take the large room. You will be entirely comfortable in the kitchen alcove. We will put a proper divan there, not a folding bed. A real divan with a mattress and a curtain on a rail, and you will have the television. You keep the balcony, which frankly you use more than anyone. That is 10.5 square meters of your own, plus the whole kitchen, which in practice is yours anyway, because you cook. The clock over the door ticked. Down in the courtyard, children were shouting about a ball. You are moving into my apartment, Tamara Petrovna said. We are consolidating the family, Christina said. 1 household instead of 2. It saves 32,000 a month immediately. And you are not alone anymore, which at your age is a serious argument, because Galina Ivanovna's husband lay 4 days before anybody found him. 2 days, and he was found by his son, who visited. Whatever. And the papers I signed at the notary? Christina's chin lifted. This was her ground, and she came onto it fast. That is exactly why the arrangement is safe for everyone, she said. The property is Sasha's now, registered, so nothing can happen to it. Nobody can touch it, and you can relax. Because honestly, Tamara Petrovna, at your age, carrying that responsibility around is a burden, and we have taken it off you. She closed the folder. You did a good thing. I want you to know I appreciate it. I said to Artyom, your mother is a smart woman. She understood immediately. Tamara Petrovna looked at her daughter-in-law for a long moment. Show me the paper, she said. What? You said it is registered. So you have the document. Show it to me. My hand signed it. I would like to look at it. The pause was very short, half a breath. But Tamara Petrovna had spent 28 years reading faces across a factory floor. And she read this one. It's at home, Christina said. In the safe place. I'm not going to carry documents like that around in a handbag on a bus, am I? Of course not. I have a photograph of it. I saw the photograph. I saw a corner of a page and a stamp. Tamara Petrovna stood up and took the kettle to the tap and spoke over the running water, pleasantly, the way you discuss a neighbor's cat. Bring me the original on Thursday, when everybody is here. Read it out loud so we all hear the same words at the same time, and then we will know exactly where each of us stands." Behind her, silence. "Why Thursday?" Christina said. "You chose Thursday. You said you were coming to discuss the future." Tamara Petrovna set the kettle on the ring and struck a match. "So come. Bring Artyom, bring Sasha, bring your mother if she wants, bring anyone you like. And bring the document." Christina stood, buttoning a coat she had never unbuttoned. "You know what your problem is," she said at the door. "You think this is about greed. It isn't. It's about the fact that you have something you don't need, and we need something we don't have. And any normal person can do that arithmetic." "I did the arithmetic," Tamara Petrovna said. "That's what worries me." That night she did not sleep much, but she did not lie there frightened either. She lay in the dark in her own bed, in her own room, and did what she used to do at the factory the night before an inspection, which was to go through it, item by item. She got up at 2 and made tea and sat in the kitchen with the light off, because with the light off, you can see the courtyard, and she looked at the poplar, which was older than the building, and she went through it again. Item 1. The green folder was gone from the linen closet. That was fine. She had known it would go, which is why what was in the linen closet since March had been a photocopy set, and the originals had been in a plastic sleeve taped to the underside of the bottom drawer of the sewing table since the day she came home from the notary. The sewing table was now on the balcony under plastic, which meant the originals were on the balcony under plastic, which was another reason she had been so angry about the fabric. Item 2. The photograph on Artyom's phone. She had seen it twice now, and both times only the lower right of a page, the stamp, the register number, her signature. Christina had come to the notary's office on Friday, the day they had arranged, and had learned that her mother-in-law had already been and gone on Thursday. She had asked for the document and been refused, because a notary does not hand out other people's papers to a daughter-in-law. So she had got what she could get, which was a glimpse and a photograph of a page corner while a clerk turned away, and she had told everyone it was a deed of gift because that was what she had come there to collect. Christina had not read one line of it. She had built a wardrobe, a divan, a school registration, and a phone call with a man in a good coat on a photograph of a signature. Item 3. The man in the good coat. That was the piece Tamara Petrovna had not had until Galina Ivanovna gave it to her, and it changed the shape of everything. A grandson needs a bedroom. A grandson does not need a facade photographed from the courtyard, or a stranger with a folder asking the pensioners on the bench which flats have one occupant. Sasha's room was never the destination. Sasha's room was the door. Once 4 people are registered and living in a flat, once the boy is enrolled in the district school at this address, once the divan is behind the curtain in the kitchen, and the pensioner has been quietly reduced to 10.5 square meters, then the sale is not a betrayal. It is simply the next reasonable step, and everyone at the table will explain to her that of course she will be provided for. Of course a room in a nice house outside town. Of course, don't be dramatic. Nobody is putting you anywhere. Item 4. Thursday. She rinsed her cup and dried it and put it in the cupboard, because she had never once in her life gone to bed leaving a cup in the sink. And she stood a moment in the doorway of the small room and looked at the wardrobe standing where her table had been. "Stand there for now," she said to it. On Wednesday she did 4 things, calmly, in order, the way Marina Lvovna had written them down for her on a pad in that tidy office. She went to the balcony at 7 in the morning while the courtyard was empty, lifted the plastic, opened the bottom drawer of the sewing table, and took out the plastic sleeve. She carried it to Galina Ivanovna on the 4th floor and asked her to keep it in her flat until 11 o'clock on Thursday, and Galina Ivanovna put it in her own linen closet under her own towels, and the two of them looked at each other, and neither of them laughed. But it was close. She walked to Sovetskaya and sat in the corridor for 25 minutes and asked Marina Lvovna one question and got one answer, and paid for a duplicate copy and a certified extract, and put both in her handbag. She went to the bank on the corner and closed one thing and opened another, and moved what was in the first into the second, which took an hour and a half and involved a girl of about 22 who called her "our dear client" 9 times. And at 4 in the afternoon she went to the post office and sent one registered letter with a return receipt to an address she copied off a card that Christina had left on the kitchen table on Monday, tucked in behind the salt, along with the folder of figures. The card was cream-colored with a small silver logo on it, and it had a name and a mobile number, and under the name it said, in letters small enough to be discreet and large enough to be read, "Real estate. Purchase of property in any condition. Immediate settlement." Tamara Petrovna had read it on Monday evening, standing at her own kitchen table, with her coat still on the hook and Christina's footsteps still going down the stairs. And she had put it back exactly where it was, behind the salt, so that nobody would know she had seen it. Then she had gone to the window and looked down at the poplar for a long time, and she had said out loud, to the empty kitchen, in the voice she used to use at the factory when the numbers came in and the plan was met, "Well, now I know what Thursday is. It means," she said, "that from the 25th of September there is a mark in the state register against this apartment, and that mark says that no transfer of ownership of it can be registered by anyone, under any document, by any representative, with any power of attorney, unless I am standing there in person with my own passport in my own hand. Not my son, not my son's wife, not a lawyer, not a man in a good coat. Me, in person, alive, on my feet, in the room." Nobody said anything. "And if such a document is filed without me," she went on, "the registrar does not check it, does not consider it, does not correspond about it. He refuses it and returns it, and the person who filed it becomes, that same day, a person who attempted to register a transaction with somebody else's real property, which is a thing the police have a whole article about." Christina's hand had come to rest on top of her folder. She was not looking at the papers anymore. She was looking at the middle of the table. "Why would you do that?" she said. "To your own family." "I did not do it to anybody. I did it around myself." Tamara Petrovna squared the sheets together. "The way you put a fence around a garden. The fence is not an accusation against the neighbors. It is just a fence." "It is an accusation." "Yes," said Tamara Petrovna. "It is also that." Rima Sergeyevna had gone quiet in a way that filled the room more than talking. She was turning the cake box string over and over between her fingers. Sasha had put his cup down and was sitting absolutely still, the way boys sit when they have understood something before the adults have said it. "Now," Tamara Petrovna said, "the 4th document. Artyom, that one is not from the notary. That one is from the post office." He picked it up, a small yellow card, the size of a postcard, with a strip of adhesive across it and a stamp and a signature in ballpoint. "A return receipt," he said, "for a registered letter. Sent Wednesday, yesterday, received today at 9:40. He turned it over. "Received by, I can't read the name. Bella. Belarusov Denis Igorevich," Tamara Petrovna said. "Real estate. Purchase of property in any condition. Immediate settlement." She looked at Christina. Your card was behind the salt from Monday evening. You put it there when you were taking the figures out of your folder, and you forgot it, and I read it while your footsteps were still going down the stairs. Christina's face did something then that Tamara Petrovna had not seen on it before, in 11 years. It went blank. Not angry, blank, the way a screen goes blank. That is a cold caller, she said. Those cards are in every letterbox in the district. They are. Yours had a mobile number written on the back in blue ink in your handwriting, and the word Thursday and a time, 4 o'clock. Tamara Petrovna let that sit for a moment. It is 20 to 2, so we have time to finish our tea before he arrives, and he will arrive, because he does not know about the letter yet. It was received by his office at 9:40 this morning, and he has been at viewings all day. His secretary signed for it. What was in the letter? Artyom said. A copy of the notarial certificate of the register mark, a copy of the revocation of power of attorney, and 1 page from me, 4 sentences, saying that I am the sole owner of this apartment, that I am not selling it, that no person has authority to negotiate about it in my name, and that any further discussion of this property with any member of my family will be treated by me as an attempt at fraud and reported as such. She poured herself tea, and her hand was steady, and she noticed that it was steady and was quietly pleased. I signed it with my full name and my passport number. Marina Lvovna dictated the 4 sentences. She said they should be short, because short sentences frighten professionals and long sentences reassure them. Galina Ivanovna made a small sound in her corner that she turned into a cough. Krisha, Rima Sergeyevna said. Her voice had gone thin. Krisha, look at me. Were you selling this woman's apartment? No. Then why is there a man coming at 4? To value it. Valuing is not selling. Any normal family knows the value of its own assets. That is not a crime. That is basic literacy. Christina's chin came up, and her voice found its footing again. And Tamara Petrovna thought, with something like admiration, that the woman was genuinely brave. In the wrong direction, at speed. And I will say something, since we are all being so honest at this table. Yes, I looked into what this flat is worth. 4,200,000, maybe 4.5 with the balcony glazed. And do you know what a 3-room apartment costs in the new district, 20 minutes further out, with an elevator and no cracked tile and a school across the courtyard? 5,000,001. 5-1. Which means, with our savings and 1 small loan, 4 people, 4, could be living decently, each with a door that closes, and Sasha would have a room, and you, Tamara Petrovna, would have a room, a real one, with a window, not a curtain in a kitchen. That was the plan. That is what the man in the good coat was for. You never said that, Artyom said slowly. You never once said that to me. Because you are soft, and you would have gone straight to your mother and asked her permission, like a boy asking for the car keys, and she would have said no, and that would have been the end of it. So you were going to do it and tell me after. I was going to do it and have everyone thank me in 2 years. By selling my apartment, Tamara Petrovna said, which you could not sell because it is not yours, which is why you needed the deed of gift, which is why you told everyone I had signed one. You were going to sign one. In 2 months you would have signed one. You would have signed it the first week we were living here, because you cannot bear an atmosphere in your own house. You have never been able to. Artyom told me that himself when we were engaged. He said, my mother will do anything to stop people being unhappy in her kitchen. The kitchen went very quiet. Artyom put his face in his hands. Yes, Tamara Petrovna said. That is true about me. That has been true my whole life, and it is the truest thing anyone has said at this table today. She looked at Christina, and there was no triumph in it. That is exactly why I went to the notary a day early and alone. Because I know myself. I knew that if I walked in there with the three of you around me, in a corridor, with a pen already in somebody's hand, I would have signed anything to make the afternoon stop being unpleasant. So I went on Thursday, at 9 in the morning, with nobody, and I sat in that office for 2 hours, and I let a stranger in a cardigan ask me what I wanted. And what did you want? Rima Sergeyevna said. I wanted Sasha to have it. She turned to her grandson. Sashenka, listen to me now and remember this, because you are 13 and you will be 63 quicker than you can believe. This flat is yours. Not one day soon, God willing. But it is yours, and it is written down, and it cannot be undone by anybody. Not by your parents, not by a divorce, not by a debt, not by a man in a good coat. Nobody can take it from you, and nobody can make you sell it before you are grown. Do you understand? Sasha nodded. His eyes had gone bright, and he was fighting it in the way boys fight it, jaw hard, looking at the tablecloth. And there is a second thing, and this is the part I want your mother to hear. Tamara Petrovna kept her eyes on the boy. You are not going to sleep in a kitchen behind a curtain. Not you, and not me. On the 16th, the divan comes, and it will go in the small room, next to that wardrobe, and it is yours. You will live here with me, in the term, weekdays, so that you can go to school number 4 and to the tutor and not do your homework on the table where 4 people eat. Your room, your door, and your grandmother 2 steps away making sirniki, which you will get tired of, and that is allowed. Christina's head came up. You're taking my son. I am taking nobody. I am inviting my grandson, whose bed is currently a curtain in a rented kitchen, into a room in my apartment, and his parents can visit any day of the week and eat at this table, and on Sundays, he goes home to you. Tamara Petrovna set down her cup. That was always available, Christina. That was available in March, when you first started talking about square meters. All you ever had to do was ask me for the room instead of trying to take the apartment. That is not the same thing. No, it is much smaller. It just happens to be the thing the boy actually needed. And the 32,000 of rent? Christina said. And the 19 and the 11. Do you have a document at the back of your plastic sleeve about that? Because that is our life. That is what is actually happening to us while you sit here being noble about your poplar tree. And here Tamara Petrovna did the thing she had been holding since Wednesday. And she did it without ceremony, because Marina Lvovna had told her that in these situations, the person who makes a speech about generosity is usually the person who is about to give nothing. She got up, went to the drawer with the bread knife and the string, took out a bank envelope, came back, and put it on the table in front of her son. 318,000, she said. That was the funeral account. I opened it when your father died, and I have put money in it every month for 19 years, because I did not want you to have to borrow to bury me. On Wednesday, I closed it and moved it. It is now a term deposit with my name on it, and one instruction. It pays out to you, Artyom, in 12 installments of 26,500, starting the 1st of October, monthly, for 1 year. Artyom stared at the envelope. He did not touch it. Mom, that covers your loan payment and the card minimum with a little over. 12 months, not more and not in cash, and not to Christina, and not into any account I do not see the statements for." She sat back down. "In 12 months, the loan is closed if you do not take a new one. If you take a new one, I will not do this again. And I want everybody at this table to hear me say that, so that in a year, nobody is surprised." "You were saving that to be buried." "I was saving it because I was frightened of being a burden when I am dead." Tamara Petrovna almost smiled. "It turns out I should have been frightened of being a burden while I was alive. Bury me from the pension, Artyom. It will stretch. I would rather my son slept at night." Rima Sergeyevna put her hand over her mouth and turned her face to the window. "So that's it," Christina said. "You solve it with money. 19 years of savings on the table so that you can keep both your rooms and take my son on weekdays and be the good one. And I am the villain of the story, at my own mother's expense, in front of my child." "You are not the villain of the story," Tamara Petrovna said. "You are the only person at this table who was actually doing arithmetic. Your numbers were correct. 32, 19, 11, 8. Every one of them true. The apartment is worth 4.2 and 5.1 buys 3 rooms in the new district, and you did the sums at a kitchen table at night when everyone else was asleep. And I know that because I have done sums at a kitchen table at night for 11 years, waiting for a housing list." She leaned forward. "And then you did one thing wrong, and it was not arithmetic. You decided that because your numbers were right, my consent was a formality. And so you photographed a corner of a page and told my family and my grandson's school and a man in a good coat that I had given away my home. And you built a wardrobe in the room where I work, and you put my fabric on a balcony in September. And you called it rags. That is the whole of your crime, Christina. And it is not greed. It is that you never once, not once since March, asked me a question and waited for the answer." Christina sat with her hands flat on her folder. Her eyes were wet and furious, and she did not blink, because blinking would have finished it. "He is coming at 4, she said. "Belorusov. What do you want me to do?" "Call him now and cancel," Tamara Petrovna said. "In this kitchen, on speaker, so that we all hear the same words at the same time. That is all. Then eat some pie, because there is half of it left, and I am not going to eat half a pie alone." Christina took out her phone. Her thumb hovered a long moment. She called. It rang twice. "Denis Igorovich, good afternoon. It's Christina Nestorova." "Yes. About 4 o'clock today, Pervomayskaya 12. A pause. In the little tinny speaker, they could all hear a man's pleasant voice saying that he had actually been about to call, that a registered letter had come in, that his office was in receipt of documents from the owner, and that in these circumstances he was obliged to withdraw entirely, and he was sure she understood. "Yes," Christina said. "I understand." "There is no property on offer," she said. "It was a misunderstanding within the family. I apologize for your time." She ended the call and put the phone face down on the oilcloth, and she looked at it for a while, and nobody rushed her. Then Artyom stood up, went around the table, and crouched down beside his mother's chair, which he had not done since he was small, and he put his forehead against her shoulder, and Tamara Petrovna put her hand on the back of her son's neck, the way she had when he was 4 and had a fever. "I'm sorry," he said into her sleeve. "Mom, I'm sorry. I knew. Not the man, not June. I swear to you I didn't know about June, but the rest of it. I knew what we were doing, And I let it happen because it was easier to push you than to say no to her. And because I told myself you'd be fine. You're always fine. You always manage." His shoulders went. "I brought a tape measure into your house." "You did." "I'm 38 years old, and I brought a tape measure into my mother's house." "Yes." She stroked his hair, which was going thin at the crown, which she had noticed in the spring and had not mentioned. "And you will remember that for the rest of your life, and it will make you a better father than you were going to be. So it was not wasted. Get up off my floor, you're too big for it, and take the oranges out of the bag before they sweat." They did not all become friends that afternoon. That is not how it goes in a kitchen on Pervomayskaya. Rima Sergeyevna cried in the bathroom for 8 minutes and came out with her face washed and made a great business of cutting the cake nobody wanted. Christina sat and answered when spoken to, and ate one piece of pie, mechanically, all of it, and said, "It's good pastry," once, in a voice with nothing behind it. Galina Ivanovna knitted 11 more rows, and then announced that her program was starting, and left, pressing Tamara Petrovna's hand in the hall so hard it hurt. Sasha did the dishes without being asked, all of them, including the pan, and he put them in the rack the right way up, and when his grandmother came to stand beside him at the sink, he said quietly under the running water, "Grandma, is it true I get the room?" "It's true." "With the wardrobe in it?" "The wardrobe stays. It fits perfectly. Your father measured it." She handed him a towel. "And my sewing table comes back in there too, in the corner by the window. And you will have to put up with me hemming curtains while you do your maths. That is the condition." "That's not a condition." "It is. Wait until October." They left at 6. At the door, coats on, in that awkward crowd of a family that has nothing left to say, Christina turned back. "The extract," she said. "The register mark. Is it permanent?" "Until I withdraw it." "And will you withdraw it?" Tamara Petrovna thought about the question honestly, because it deserved that. "No," she said. "Not because of today. Because I am 63, and in 10 years I may not be as clear as I am this afternoon, and I would like the fence to be standing then, too, when I cannot build it. It protects you as well, Christina, though you will not see that for years. When I am 80 and confused, and somebody comes to this door with a folder, nobody will be able to say afterwards that it was you." Christina looked at her for a long moment. "You're not stupid," she said. "I told Artyom you were sentimental." "I am sentimental," Tamara Petrovna said. "You just never checked whether I was anything else as well." The door closed. She stood in her hall and listened to 4 sets of footsteps going down 4 flights and out into the courtyard. Then she went into the small room and switched on the light. The wardrobe stood there, tall and pale and new, smelling of chipboard, filling the wall where 19 years of her working life had stood. She looked at it for a while. Then she went to the balcony, brought in the last box, the one with the lining silk, and set it down on the floor beside it, and pulled the sewing table back into the corner by the window, and put the lamp on it, and plugged the lamp in, and switched it on. The light fell on the table the way it always had. She sat down in her chair and looked out at the poplar in the dark, at the yellow squares of the windows opposite, and she found that she was not tired, and not triumphant, and not sad, but something quieter than all 3. She was in her own room, in her own apartment, on a Thursday evening, and there was half a cabbage pie in the kitchen, and on the 16th, a boy was coming to live with her. The phone rang at 9:30. Marina Lvovna, from a mobile, off the clock. "Well," the notary said. "Did they come?" "They came, all of them. There was a buyer coming at 4 and he canceled on speakerphone in my kitchen." A pause. "Read out loud?" "Every line. My son read it. I made him read the boring parts." "Good," Marina Lvovna said. "That's the part they never do. They hide the paper in a drawer and win nothing, because the family goes on believing what it was told in March." Another pause, and then, in a slightly different voice, "Tamara Petrovna, in 5 years, that is the 4th call like this I have had, and the other 3 were from daughters. You are the first mother-in-law to call me and say it worked." "I had a neighbor with knitting," Tamara Petrovna said. "It makes a great difference, having a witness with knitting." She washed the last cup, dried it, and put it in the cupboard, because she had never once in her life gone to bed leaving a cup in the sink. On the 16th, the divan came, and 2 men carried it up 4 flights, and it went into the small room next to the wardrobe. Sasha arrived on the 17th with a rucksack and a gym bag and a box of schoolbooks, and stood in the middle of his room and did not know what to do with his face. By the end of October, he had put a poster on the wall over the divan, and had learned to fold the plaid himself, and had eaten so many sirniki that he asked in November whether there was any chance of something else in the mornings. Artyom came on Wednesdays and did small jobs. He glazed the balcony in the first week of the month, properly, with the good frames, and it took him 3 Saturdays, and he did not once say what it cost. He kept the loan schedule taped inside a cupboard door at home and crossed off each month with a pen. In March, the first card was closed, and he came over and told his mother about it standing in the hall with his coat still on, like a boy with a report card. Christina came at first only to collect Sasha on Fridays and stood in the hall and did not take her coat off. In December, she stayed for tea. In February, she asked, without looking up, whether Tamara Petrovna could take in a hem on a work skirt, and Tamara Petrovna said yes and did it that evening and refused money, and Christina left 300 rubles under the sugar bowl anyway, which was, from that woman, an entire sentence. They never discussed the apartment again. Not once. Not at New Year, not at Sasha's 15th birthday, not when the family sat at that same table with the same gold-rimmed cups. But every year, in late September, Tamara Petrovna took a slow walk to Pervomayskaya, sat in the corridor for 20 minutes, and paid a small fee to have the extract reissued, fresh and dated, with the mark on it. No registration without the personal participation of the rights holder. She kept it in the linen closet, second shelf, under the towels, and she kept a photocopy in the bottom drawer of the sewing table, taped to the underside, because a woman learns things at 63 that she cannot unlearn at 64, and because a fence you check every autumn is the only kind that is still standing when you actually need it. The photograph was not a very good one. There were too many people in it, too many for one frame, and half the faces were in shadow from the lamp above the table. But Tamara Petrovna had always said it was a good photograph, because everyone who was supposed to be there was there. She sat at the end of the table, turned slightly away from the camera, looking at someone to the right of it. Artyom probably, or Sasha, or perhaps Marina, who was not yet family then and was standing behind someone, laughing at something the photographer could not hear. At the very bottom of the photograph, almost outside the frame, there was a hand. Someone's hand rested on the edge of the table beside her elbow. Tamara Petrovna had never been able to remember whose it was. She said it did not matter. And perhaps that was the only thing about which she had ever been wrong. Because all her life she had noticed hands. Who held the door? Who moved the cup closer to the person who could not quite reach it? Who took the heavy bag? Who held an elbow on the stairs? Who put a piece of paper in front of someone and said, "Here, take your time, read it"? Who did not sign for them? Who did not decide for them? Who stayed while they thought? These were small things, and separately they meant almost nothing. But then, years later, you found that a life was made out of small things. Not all of it, not happiness in its entirety, not health or money or luck, but the part of life that allowed a person to say one evening, "This is mine, and I decided." Galina understood that much later. When she was a child, she thought her great-grandmother was a person who knew the answers. It seemed that way. Tamara Petrovna knew how much salt went into the soup, when to seal the jars, where in the district they changed hearing aid batteries, how long the trip to the market took on a Sunday, which bus went past the cemetery, where shoes could be repaired without an appointment, and why you should never trust a person who said too quickly that something was simple. She knew which envelope could not be thrown away. She knew you never signed the last page before reading the first. She knew that when somebody said, "It's just a formality," you immediately asked, which formality? But when Galina was 13, she once asked, "Great-Grandma, did you really know everything?" Tamara Petrovna was sitting by the window, taking apart an old sweater because the wool was good, and she hated wasting good wool. "No." "Then why did everyone come to you?" "Because I knew what I didn't know." Galina frowned. "How does that work?" "It's a very useful kind of knowledge." "But if you don't know what to do?" "Then you find someone who does." "And if there isn't anyone?" "There usually is. Sometimes they're just in another room." Galina thought about that. "What if they're dead?" "Then you find someone else." "What if everyone's dead?" "Then you read it yourself." "What if you can't?" "You learn." Galina was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "What if you're scared?" Tamara Petrovna looked down at the sweater again. "Especially then." Galina did not understand. Not then. She understood years later. After Tamara Petrovna died, the apartment remained almost exactly as it had been. Sasha could not decide what to do with the things. Marina could, but did not want to decide alone. Artyom, who by then walked badly and had lost a great deal of weight over the previous year, came on the third day after the funeral and sat in the kitchen. He looked at the table, the butter dish, the sugar jar, the old kettle, the hook by the door where a light spring coat still hung, although it was already autumn. "We should sort everything," he said. "We should," Sasha agreed. They did not. They did not the following week either. A month later, Marina took the sheets off the bed because they needed washing, and then for 3 days she could not make herself put clean ones back on it. They found a coat Tamara Petrovna had not worn in 5 years, 3 pairs of gloves, 2 boxes of thread, old bills, photographs, letters, and 1 plastic folder with blue ballpoint writing across the front. "Sasha, do not lose." Sasha opened it at the kitchen table. Inside were the apartment documents, old certificates, and several papers he had already seen. At the bottom was an envelope. On it, in Tamara Petrovna's handwriting, were the words, "If you are reading this, it means I can no longer throw you out of the kitchen." Artyom laughed. Then he stopped. Sasha opened it. There were 3 sheets of paper. The first began, "I do not know when you will find this. I hope not immediately." It was not a will. It was not a set of instructions. It was a page about what to do when, at some point in your life, you were told that everything had to be decided right now. If someone tells you that you must sign today because tomorrow will be too late, ask why tomorrow will be too late. If someone tells you that everyone has already agreed, ask who exactly. If someone tells you it is only for convenience, ask whose convenience. If someone becomes offended by your questions, ask them more slowly. If you genuinely need to make a decision quickly, make it quickly. But let it be your quick decision, not somebody else's hurry. And one more thing. Do not turn this apartment into a museum. I lived here. I was not stored here. Change the pipes if they leak. Throw out the curtains if you hate them. Paint the walls. Buy a proper refrigerator. Take the mirror down if you are tired of looking at it. Just don't throw away the table. The table is good. Marina laughed through her tears. She is still going to be ordering us around after she's dead. Of course, Artyom said. What did you expect? Sasha read to the end. The last sentence was short. And feed people. Underneath it was her signature. Tamara. No patronymic, as though she had not been writing a legal document at all, but a note for the refrigerator. They kept the table. At first because they could not bring themselves to throw it away. Later because it really was a good table. It was old, scratched in places, with a small iron mark along one edge, but it was solid. They sanded it once, then again. On the third year, Sasha said they should finally replace it because there was no way to clean it properly anymore. Marina looked at him. Don't start. So they did not replace it. The neighborhood changed around them. The pharmacy on the first floor closed. A parcel collection point opened in its place. Then that closed too. A new path was laid across the courtyard. The old poplar was taken down after a branch fell onto a parked car. They planted another tree in its place. Nikolai Fyodorovich died at 94. For the last 3 months of his life, he lived with his daughter, and then he returned to Pervomayskaya because, as he explained, his daughter's sofa was too comfortable and it was making him lazy. He came to the kitchen on the first Saturday of the month, until the month before he died. By then, the bench committee had become something larger than any of them. There were 12 people who came regularly, then 18. Then people from the neighboring building started coming. Someone brought a woman from the next street, who had been asked to sign a document she did not understand. Someone else brought a man whose pension had been calculated incorrectly. There were questions about leases, utilities, bank letters, inheritance, medical forms, repairs, debts, benefits, and once, for nearly an hour, a disagreement about whether a man was allowed to remove a radiator from his own apartment. Nobody at the table knew everything. That had become part of the rule. If they did not know, they said so. Then they found someone who did. The kitchen became too small, so they moved once a month into the community room downstairs. Tamara Petrovna would have hated it. There was no good light, the chairs were terrible, the tea was always too weak, but there was enough space for everyone. On the wall, someone eventually put up a photograph of Tamara Petrovna. Not the wedding photograph, another one. She was standing in the courtyard with her hands full of groceries, looking annoyed because Sasha had taken the picture without warning her. Underneath it was a small handwritten card. Ask questions. Take your time. Don't let anyone decide for you. And feed Pope. ****. Nobody knew who had written it. Nobody asked. Years later, when Galina was 23, she brought her boyfriend to Pervomayskaya for the first time. He was a good young man, too polite. That was what Tamara Petrovna would have said. Too quick to agree. He sat at the kitchen table with Sasha and Marina and answered every question before anyone had finished asking it. When they asked what he did, he explained. When they asked where he lived, he explained. When they asked what he wanted to do in 5 years, he had an answer ready. After dinner, Galina walked him to the door. When she came back, Sasha was washing dishes. "Well?" he asked. "Well, what?" "Do you like him?" "Yes," Sasha nodded. Then he said, "Good." Galina waited. "That's all?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know." He dried his hands. "Your great-grandmother would have asked you whether you like the way you are around him." Galina looked at him. "Do I?" "I don't know." She thought about it. Then she smiled. "I do." "Then that's enough." He turned back to the dishes. Galina stood in the doorway for a moment. "Papa?" "Yes?" "Did she really change everything?" He knew who she meant. He looked toward the sewing table. The lamp was on. The old plastic sleeve was still taped beneath the drawer. "No," he said. "She didn't change everything." He dried the last cup and put it upside down beside the sink. "She changed what happened in one room." He looked at the table. "Then somebody in that room changed what happened in another." He put the towel over his shoulder. "That's how it works." Galina was 32 when she finally understood the whole story. Not because anybody explained it to her, because one autumn afternoon, at work, a woman came into her office with a folder. She was 67. She was frightened. She had been told that she needed to sign something immediately. The woman kept saying she was sorry for taking up Galina's time. Galina closed the folder. "Let's start again," she said. The woman looked at her. "Start with what they asked you to sign." The woman began to explain. Galina listened. She did not interrupt. She did not tell her what to do. When the woman finished, Galina said, "I don't know yet." The woman looked disappointed, then relieved. "You don't?" "No, but I know who we can ask." She picked up the phone. For a moment, before dialing, she remembered a kitchen on Pervomayskaya. A pie, a sewing machine, a woman with reading glasses pushed into her hair, a boy of 13 standing in a doorway, and a sentence she had heard when she was 13 herself. "If you're scared, especially then." Galina made the call. The apartment on Pervomayskaya remained in the family, not because it had become sacred. Tamara Petrovna had specifically forbidden that. It remained because people lived there. People cooked there. People argued there. Children did homework there. Someone complained about the pipes every winter. Someone forgot to buy sugar. Someone always left a cup in the sink. The sewing table stayed by the window. The lamp stayed on it. The old photograph stayed above it. And the table stayed in the kitchen. Every first Saturday of the month, from 11 until 1, the door was open. There was tea. There was pie. There were papers. There were questions. Sometimes there were answers. Sometimes there were none. And sometimes somebody would sit silently for 20 minutes before finally saying what they had actually come to ask. Those were usually the important ones. Years later, when Galina brought her own daughter to the apartment, the little girl stood in the kitchen and pointed at the photograph on the wall. "Who is that?" "Your great-great-grandmother." "Was she nice?" Galina looked at the photograph. Tamara Petrovna was sitting at the end of the wedding table, very straight, holding a glass she was not drinking from, looking at someone outside the frame. "Not always," Galina said. The child looked surprised. "She was strict." "Was she mean?" "No." "Then why strict?" Galina smiled. Because people are sometimes too scared to protect themselves. The girl considered this. Then she pointed at the table. Is this hers? Yes. Can I sit here? Of course. The girl climbed onto the chair. There was flour on the table. Somebody had been making dough. There was a cup with a spoon in it. There were 3 sheets of paper waiting to be read. Outside the window, the new tree in the courtyard had grown tall enough that its branches had begun to touch the balcony. Galina looked at it for a moment. Then she pulled out the chair opposite her daughter and sat down. The child put both hands on the table. Tell me the story. Which one? The story about why everybody comes here. Galina thought about the woman with the folder, about Valentina Kuzminichna, about the corridor on Sovetskaya, about a boy with a tape measure, about a grandmother who had spent 2 hours answering questions because she did not know the answers yet. She could have told it as a story about property, about documents, about caution, about a family that had managed to keep an apartment for 3 generations. But that would have been the wrong story. So she said, once, a woman was asked what she wanted. Her daughter waited. And she didn't know. Then what happened? She took her time. The child nodded solemnly, as though this were the most important part. And? Galina looked at the photograph on the wall. And someone waited with her. That was the story. Not the apartment, not the papers, not the people who came with folders and lanyards, not even the mark on the extract that had protected a piece of property for so many years. It was simply that, once, someone had been given enough time to say what she wanted. And because she had been given that time, a room remained hers. Because the room remained hers, a boy grew up in it. Because the boy grew up there, he learned to build rooms instead of merely measuring them. Because he learned that, he built a life. Because he built a life, another child was born. And because that child grew up hearing the same story, one frightened woman somewhere in the city would eventually be given the same thing. Time, a chair, a cup of tea, and somebody willing to say, "Take your time. Read it again. We don't have to decide today." The girl at the table looked up. Is that the end? Galina smiled. No. Why not? Because you are sitting at the table. The girl looked down at her hands. Then she looked toward the old photograph. Outside, the wind moved through the branches of the young tree. Inside, someone put the kettle on. And at 11 o'clock the next Saturday, the door opened again.